We are getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
I was so careful to wear gloves. He didn't want to leave any fingerprints behind. What many perpetrators do not realize is they are leaving their fingerprints inside the glove.
Imagine coming home to a house that looks completely normal. The lights are off. The doors are locked. Nothing is broken. Nothing is overturned. No shattered glass. No signs of a struggle. From the outside, from any direction, everything looks exactly the way it should. Except the person who lives there is gone. And the one thing that should have been watching, the doorbell camera, has been ripped away. That right there is where this story begins. Not with chaos. Not with a dramatic crime scene. But with something far more unsettling, the illusion of normalcy. A house that looks untouched. A life that looks undisturbed. And a woman who simply vanished. This is the case of Nancy Guthrie. Before we get into the timeline, before we talk about suspects or forensics or what investigators found, I want you to focus on one object. Her phone. In almost every missing person's case, a phone is the first thing investigators reach for. It is your digital shadow. It tracks where you've been, who you called, what you searched, what time you woke up. A phone, even a locked one, tells a story. Nancy's phone was found inside the house. And it had been wiped. Now pause on that detail. Because wiping a phone is not something you do in a panic. It is not impulsive. It is not something that happens in the middle of a struggle or a desperate moment. Wiping a phone is a deliberate act. It takes time. It takes thought. It takes someone who understood exactly what that phone contained and exactly why it needed to be erased. But here's the forensic logic that investigators immediately recognized. The data was gone, but the physical phone was still there. Which means whoever did this wasn't trying to hide the phone. They were trying to hide the traces on the phone. The fingerprints. The contact. The evidence that someone else had touched it. That distinction matters enormously. And we will come back to it. Nancy Guthrie was part of a quiet, close-knit community. She had routines. She had people who expected to hear from her. She was not someone who disappeared without warning, without reason, without a trace. And from that moment forward, nothing. No confirmed sightings. No contact. No body. No answers. What investigators were left with was a house, a wiped phone, a ripped camera, and a 41-minute window that held all the secrets. Let's slow this down carefully, because the physical details of the scene are important. When law enforcement entered the home, the interior showed no obvious signs of a violent confrontation. Nothing appeared to have been ransacked. Personal belongings were in place. There was no widespread disarray that would suggest a chaotic abduction or a sudden violent event. But step outside. On the doorstep, blood. Now think about what that contrast tells you. The inside of the house, controlled, composed, almost deliberately undisturbed. The outside, evidence that something violent had occurred at the threshold. That contrast, that specific, deliberate contrast, does not happen by accident. You do not have a calm interior and a bloody doorstep as the result of something unplanned. This was not a crime of opportunity. This was organized. And then there were the back doors. The back doors of the residence were found open. Not broken. Not forced. Open. Which raises a question that investigators were forced to sit with. Did Nancy open those doors herself, or did someone else open them, from the inside, after the fact, as part of a planned exit or a staged scene? Both possibilities are disturbing. And neither one points toward anything innocent. Here's where the case gets razor sharp. Investigators were able to establish, through a combination of digital records and witness accounts, a critical window during which Nancy's disappearance occurred. Between 1:47 a.m. and 2:28 a.m. 41 minutes. That is the window. Everything, whatever happened to Nancy Guthrie, happened within those 41 minutes. And the reason investigators could pinpoint it so precisely is because of digital activity tied to devices in and around the home. Now, 41 minutes sounds like a short time. But let's think about what can happen in 41 minutes when someone is operating with a plan. A phone can be wiped. A camera can be removed. A scene can be staged. A person can be moved. 41 minutes, in the hands of someone who came prepared, is more than enough time. What makes this window even more significant is the absence of anything within it. No calls made. No alarm triggered. No neighbor disturbed. No passing car flagged anything suspicious. The window is almost perfectly silent, and that silence, investigators understood, was itself a kind of evidence. Because silence like that doesn't happen by accident either. Let's talk forensics. Because this is where the case becomes genuinely fascinating from an investigative standpoint. The doorbell camera had been physically removed from the front of the house. Not malfunctioned. Not disabled remotely. Physically ripped away. And that matters, because it tells you something about the perpetrator's awareness level. They knew the camera was there. They knew it was recording. And they removed it. But removing a camera creates its own evidence. It tells investigators that this person was thinking about surveillance. It tells them this person was thinking about being identified. That is not the behavior of someone acting on impulse. That is the behavior of someone who had studied the location, possibly scouted it, before the night in question. Now, back to the phone. Forensic logic around digital devices is nuanced, and here is why the wiped phone is so revealing. If you want to destroy data, you take the phone. You throw it in a river. You smash it. You make it disappear. The fact that the phone was left behind, physically present in the house, but with its data wiped, tells investigators that the perpetrator's primary concern was not the device itself. It was the fingerprints. The touch traces. The biological evidence that could connect them to that specific screen, in that specific house, on that specific night. And then, Nancy's hearing aids. This detail has haunted investigators and those following this case alike. Nancy wore hearing aids. They were found in the house, not on her person. Now, this is the kind of detail that looks small until you think about it carefully. Hearing aids are not something you forget. They are not something you casually set down before going somewhere unexpected. If Nancy left voluntarily, of her own choosing, in the middle of the night, why would she leave without something she needed to hear the world around her? The absence of those hearing aids on her person is not a neutral fact. It is a forensic statement. It says, she did not leave this house prepared to be out in the world. Everything we've examined so far, the wiped phone, the removed camera, the staged interior, the open back doors, the precise timing, paints a very specific behavioral portrait. This was not impulsive. This was not emotional. This was not the result of a confrontation that spiraled out of control. This was planned. The perpetrator, whoever is responsible for Nancy's disappearance, came to that house knowing what they were going to do and knowing what they needed to erase. The removal of the camera demonstrates pre-operational surveillance. The wiped phone demonstrates forensic awareness. The controlled interior demonstrates a deliberate effort to delay the discovery that anything was wrong. Behavioral analysts would describe this as a planned departure, meaning the removal of the victim was engineered in advance, not improvised in the moment. The perpetrator controlled the scene. They controlled the timeline. They controlled what was left behind and what was taken. And that level of control narrows the field considerably. Because controlling a crime scene to this degree requires familiarity with the house, with the victim's routines, with the layout of the property, with where the camera was mounted. You do not acquire that familiarity the night of. You acquire it over time. Which means someone close to this case, someone in Nancy's life or at the edges of it, had been watching. Planning. Waiting. As of today, the case of Nancy Guthrie remains officially open and unresolved. No arrest has been made. No body has been recovered. No definitive answer has been provided to her family or to the community in McMinnville that is still waiting for the truth. What investigators have is a forensic fingerprint of a crime without a body, a collection of deliberate choices made by someone who understood exactly how to cover their tracks. A wiped phone. A ripped camera. A controlled scene. A 41-minute window of silence. And a woman who was there, and then wasn't. The absence of evidence in this case is not the absence of a crime. It is, in every forensic and investigative sense, evidence of the crime itself. The cleaning, the staging, the deliberate removal of surveillance, these are not things that happen naturally. They are decisions. And every decision leaves a trace, even when the decision was made specifically to erase traces. So here is the question I want to leave with you. When someone goes to that level of preparation, when they scout a location, remove a camera, wipe a phone, stage a scene, and disappear in a 41-minute window in the middle of the night, what does that tell you about their relationship to the victim? Not a stranger. Not someone who wandered in by chance. Someone who knew Nancy Guthrie. Someone she may have trusted. And somewhere out there, that person knows exactly what happened in those 41 minutes. The question is, when will the rest of us find out?